conducted the study in 2020. But by 2021, we achieved zero hunger. And this was directly linked to the interventions that we conducted in our study, such as working with other NGOs to provide food top-ups for the families, food parcels. But in the third year of our study, we started seeing an increase in the food poverty again in the household. And we are attributing these to the systematic issues such as rising food prices, the COVID-19 pandemic, and the economic pressures that most families are not able to afford food.
I'm very interested, Doc, in, so from what I understand, before we get to, because you speak of the initial year where there was initially an increase in hunger rates, then 2021, no hunger, then in the third year, you started seeing an increase once again in those hunger rates. So was the study tracking a sample-focused community of participants over a period of time?
Yes. So what we did is that we followed children in five low-income communities in schools. We focused on children in grade R to grade 3. So we did a baseline assessment in the year 2020, and in 2021 we followed the same children as well as in 2022. So in the first year, we did a baseline assessment, and in the second year, we then did intervention. So in the third year, we were also measuring whether the interventions that we had implemented have worked.
Got you. Okay, let's take a quick pause, and then we'll come back on the other side and continue our conversation with Dr. Matshidiso.
Specsavers cares about your vision. Glaucoma is known as the silent thief of sight, as most cases don't have any symptoms. Get tested today. Specsavers.
You are listening to The Full Circle.
It is The Full Circle with myself, Bridget Masinga, on SAFM, as we have a conversation with Dr. Matshidiso Silo, looking at the study that was undertaken by her team at the University of Johannesburg Center for Social Development, tracking, of course, the food poverty line and the hunger rates within South Africa's children. And you say that, Doc, you say that you tracked in 5 low-income communities from grade R to grade 3.
Yes.
And initially in your assessing of the baseline, what kind of information came out of that you used as that benchmark in order to be able to then track with year on year on year?
Okay, so what we did is that we interviewed the parents, we interviewed the teachers, we interviewed the children, and we also did health assessments of the children. So when we interviewed the parents, we asked questions of whether the children had 3 meals a day or if they've slept hungry in any of the nights the week before. Mm-hmm. So that's how we used that information, and we asked again after a year and in the year 2 and in year 3. So we used the same questions for us to be able to give a trend of the food outcomes or the child outcomes.
And in 2021, you say that you sort of your data correlated that there was no hunger. What were the interventions or the factors at play in that year, and how did those change subsequently in the third year when you started seeing yet again an increase in the hunger rates?
Okay, so what we did is that we worked with different stakeholders. We presented our baseline findings of the statistics that we found. And then we drew on the resources that were available of what can we do to support these children and these families. So in instances whereby we had children that were going to bed hungry, we worked with these agencies to provide food parcels for those children. And we also worked with the departments to strengthen feeding programs, because as we know, during COVID, particularly in the first year, because of the school closures, some children were not able to benefit from the school nutrition program. So we did bring it up to those departments so that they are aware. So when schools started opening up, children going back to school, we started seeing this improvement in year 2 of our study, which was in 2021. So this was directly linked to the interventions we implemented, those food top-ups, and the children going back to school benefiting from the school nutrition program. And the economy started opening up, and some people were able to get employment.
Yeah. And then when you saw the trend once again now starting to regress, what were the dynamics at play?
Sorry, I didn't get that.
I said, so in your third year, you indicated that you then started to see once again a reversal back to the initial hunger rates, right? If I understood correctly. What were the factors then that were at play in the third year, the variables that were at play in the third year that affected the regression?
Okay, basically those were systematic issues such as high unemployment rates, parents losing their jobs. We did see the harsh consequences of the COVID-19 pandemic. So mainly it was those drivers when we saw that those who had employment did not have employment.
Okay, I got you. So we know that obviously in South Africa, there's over like 13 million plus children that receive a child support grant, right? But that grant obviously doesn't get to all children who qualify for it for a number of reasons. In fact, I think it's around 17, you guys stated at around 17.5% of eligible children that still don't receive the grant. What does this speak to, and how does a study like yours inform those kinds of policies?
Okay, so what we have seen in our research is that the child support grant is very crucial, and it serves as a safety net for many families. It provides financial assistance to caregivers, and it has significantly reduced child hunger rates since its inception. But the value of the child support grant is not enough, especially because it's still below the food poverty line. So we have seen that it does not cover the basic needs of the child, and a significant portion of eligible children are not receiving this grant due to other issues like the lack of documentation and the limited outreach to these kids. So this has policy implications. These are the issues where we need to investigate the barriers towards access to this grant, and that can contribute to policy discussions.
By way of the changes that need to happen, how do we begin to address some of the significant barriers here when it comes to severe child poverty, especially when we're talking the fragmentation of services, right, across the various departments that sometimes don't speak to each other?
Okay. So basically what needs to happen here is that we need to improve, and it's also what our study has tried to do, to try to improve this coordination between the different government departments, because what previously happened is that they are all trying to solve one problem, but they are working in silos. So what the communities of practice does is that it strengthens those collaborations between these government departments so that we can look beyond the challenges in solving the gaps in service delivery. And for us to follow up to these children, we need to work together to be supporting them.
I'm also wondering, Dr. Matshidiso, just by way of the interventions, when one undertakes a study like this, because you mentioned that, when you were assessing for the baseline in your initial year, you then rallied a variety of stakeholders together to come and plug into preventative measures, right, to help the children in these communities where your study was being undertaken. But what does that say about long-term intervention and long-term commitment? It's one thing to come in with short-term measures because for the purposes of undertaking a study, but are you also in a position where perhaps the center can continue on a longer-term program with the communities, the 5 communities that you've isolated?
Okay, that is a difficult one because the center was funded, the study was funded by the National Research Foundation, and the funding has now stopped. The program was for 4 years. Mm-hmm. So now we do need our government to take forward the work that we have already started. So that is where the importance of the collaboration is important, to be bringing in different stakeholders to speak about these issues that are affecting children. So this will be helpful to close the gaps that are currently there in terms of delivering services for our children. So it's more important, and we are having various discussions with various government departments to try and see where we can take the project, how we can take the project forward.
In the immediate, by way of immediate interventions that are essential, what has been highlighted as top priority from your study and by the communities?
Okay, so the main one, which is also key to this discussion today, is to ensuring that there is zero hunger amongst our children, because we have also seen in research that if children are not eating or do not have enough to eat, then it also affects their learning outcomes. So there has been other interventions in place, like the integrated school health program has really played a critical role in this, because we've seen research has shown that there were improved learning outcomes amongst children who are beneficiaries of that school nutrition program. But now we need to look at going beyond the school, but go to our communities. So this is where the major collaboration needs to happen.
Okay. Dr. Matshidiso Silo, we appreciate the time with you, and the good doctor is a researcher at the University of Johannesburg's Center for Social Development in Africa. It's 1:30. It's time for us to get into the headline news.
Thank you, Bridget. In the news headlines, ANC Secretary General Fikile Mbalula has warned political parties that negotiating the national budget on the basis of political scoring may result in the government of national unity being reconfigured. Gauteng Premier Panyaza Lesufi has emphasized the importance of repositioning the province as the preferred destination of choice. Lesufi delivered opening remarks at the inaugural Public Works Infrastructure Summit underway in Sandton in Johannesburg. And scientists in California say they've made major improvements to a brain implant that can translate thoughts about speech to spoken word in near real time. A full update follows at the top of the hour.
Stay on top of all meaningful, top trending stories right here on SAFM. Leading the conversation.
All right, just gone 1:30 on the Full Circle with myself, Bridget Masinga. As we continue the conversations, we're going to get into a little bit of stages, pages, screens, and more now. Touching base with an old friend of the station. Nakane is joining us, and we're talking
Stages, pages, screens, and more on the Full Circle with Bridget Masinga.
Nakani is joining us for stages, pages, screens, and more. And Nakani returns to a music with a bold interpretation of Seal. And is it Adamski's classic Killer? You know, I'm not that well versed in all the music. How are you doing this afternoon?
I'm very well, thank you. That was a very smooth transition there.
See,
From you to the voiceover, very nice.
Siyazama. Which part of the world are you at now? Every time I talk to you, you're somewhere fabulous.
I don't know about fabulous, but I'm in London.
Oh, you're in London. Okay. Lovely.
I don't know if it can still be called fabulous in this day and age.
I mean, listen.
A lot has happened.
A lot has happened, Nakane. A lot has happened. But for you, it's just your backyard now. But for a lot of people, it's still fabulous. It's so good to catch up with you.
That's right.
So good to catch up with you in the new year. And you've just announced this reinterpretation of the classic tune Killer that is, it was released just a few days ago, if I'm not mistaken, right?
Yeah, so it came out on Friday.
Came out on Friday. Okay. I mean,
and tomorrow, we're actually releasing the video tomorrow.
Oh, okay. Tell us about the project. Is this a precursor to a full-blown musical project?
Well, on some level, yes. I'm working on 2 different albums, but I don't want to release those until next year or the year after.
Okay.
And I thought, you know what? I'm usually making people wait 5 years between albums. I just didn't want that to happen again. I wanted to be in conversation with my audience and to give them music.
Yes.
You know?
Yes.
And this seemed like the right decision to make because I performed the song before live and people always loved it and asked me to record it.
Mm-hmm.
So I thought, let me give people what they want.
Well, listen, your audience will love you and thank you for it. We appreciate that. Also, and I think I've asked you this before, sort of the wait between projects. Why for you is that of necessity? I know there are, great artists like a Sade who's articulated that on average, the reason it takes them 10 years is because life has to be lived in between in order for that communication you speak about to be able to happen.
If I wanted to and I was careless, I could release an album every 6 months. But I have a lot of versions of songs, and I normally want to investigate what a song can become in many different iterations before I put out a version of it. Mm-hmm. Like, for example, even this reinterpretation of Killer, my version is called Killer 25 because it's 2025. Mm-hmm. But I have about 40 versions of it in my hard drive. So, and this is because I care about what I put out there. Yes. I don't put out anything that comes out, any first thought that comes out into my head that people must hear, because there's already enough noise out there in the world. Mm-hmm. I want my addition to that noise to actually, matter.
Then I wonder, does that speak to, and I mean, I completely accept what you've just said, right, about being considerate and but I wonder, does that also not say something about an artist's inability to know when a piece of work is finished?
I know when it's finished. Believe me, I know for a fact when it's finished. I have that feeling in my gut that says, okay, enough now.
Yes.
Yes, of course, there are moments where you're like, come on, Nakane, this is getting ridiculous. But for example, even with the song, my partner and my manager were like, God damn, enough. You've been going at it for a year and a half. It's just a cover. It's just you haven't even written the song. And I knew what I was looking for. I knew that there were frequencies that I was not getting.
Okay.
And the moment that I got that thing, mm-hmm. I needed to make it was one quick decision. It took 2 afternoons. I was like, okay, fine. It's done now. But I had to get to that place because at the end of the day, once I put it out there, it's out there forever.
Yeah.
And it bears my name. It doesn't bear my manager's name. It doesn't bear my partner's name. It bears my name.
So with that kind of very intense creative process, have you put out something before and then had instant regret the minute it was out to say, I should have followed my gut and not released this?
Oh my god. It's happened 2 or 3 times where I said, I don't know if I should add the song, and then maybe the label was like, no, you must add the song. And then I'll release the album and I'll be like, ah, you know what? It actually, I didn't need that in there, or I should have listened to my gut. Because, you know what, Bridget?
Yeah.
All the time that something good has happened in my career has been when I listen to my gut.
Mm.
And it's like the ancestors are saying, "Oh, you don't want to listen to us? Okay, fine then. Go ahead. Come back to us. Come back when you want to listen again."
I can't imagine what it must be like to be your producing partner. You know, and how you get to the point where there is that trust, but also that understanding of this is Nakane's process. You know, and,
Yeah.
and you can't walk away from it until he says, "We are now done."
Well, the thing is, before we go to recording, before I collaborate with other people, I will have worked on the song over and over and over and over and over and over again, to the point where I can allow other people in.
Mm-hmm.
I've made the mistake of letting people hear something that was not finished yet, and it sort of made me insecure about the song. Whereas now I know, okay, Nakane, you don't share the thing, you don't bring in a producing partner if there is one,
Mm-hmm.
until you're finished. Until you've finished, until I've got it to as far as I can get it.
Got you. Makes perfect sense. Now, coming back to Killer 25, which is your rendition, and you say this song for you is about rebirth and consequence. Tell us more about these themes and the significance of them for you in your journey.
Well, I'm an independent artist now. I was signed to a big label and it didn't work out, as it most of the time doesn't, for artists like me. Like, we've just spoken about this, and
Yes.
no, I will not be compelled to be something I'm not. So at the moment, I'm not saying I'll never work with a label ever again, but at the moment I'm playing and toying with the idea of being an independent artist, and I think that's where the rebirth thing comes from. I just feel, I know, I was having a conversation with a friend of mine, and they were trying to have me do something that I didn't want to do, and I said, you know what, at this age in my life, you know, I've released 3 albums and 2 EPs.
Yeah.
I've written a novel. I've made a short film. I've done a lot of things. You know, I've acted. The only thing I can do right now is be myself. Without someone behind me on my shoulder going, oh, this won't sell, this won't do this. I just need to follow my heart, and I need to feel it, listen to my gut, to my ancestors, and see what that actually entails without the fear of failure.
Well, listen, we wish that on many more artists, but I think it also comes with a certain vulnerability and a certain bravery, yeah? I was talking
And
to
risk.
And risk, absolutely, because also there's no one for you to blame if things don't go
my
according to
goodness.
plan.
Oh yeah, finally I can actually say it was me. I messed up. Which is kind of freeing because you're like, oh, okay, so it was me. Okay.
Yeah.
I could have done this. Whereas when someone else you're like, why couldn't they do this? Why couldn't they do that? I don't know. I'm experimenting, you know, and I think I've earned the right to experiment.
Absolutely, that you have. And if we continue on this path of experimentation, as you said, you've got 2 different albums that you're toying with releasing next year, so we won't put any pressure on you into expanding.
But I have a lot of singles coming out this year, but I'll be releasing a lot more singles this year.
Well,
because, you know, I'm constantly making work, you know, but I also know that a song that I love may not work in the album. You know, I've written songs that I believe are some of the best songs I've ever written, and still haven't released them because they just didn't fit into the work at the time.
Yeah. Now, tell me this, with that strategy, and I know that sort of music and how artists package music and how you put it out there has changed, right? We live in a world where a lot of people are enticed to actually buy more singles in this digital era than to buy the full album. But you also have artists like an Adele, for instance, who was really gung-ho in the album being released in its entirety in a particular order and being listened to from top to bottom because of the story that they were crafting at the time. How do you strike that balance of knowing that, as you say, you've got a lot of singles coming out this year, but they may not necessarily speak to the 2 projects that you've got coming out next year? How do you strike that balance of creating a fluid body of work so that the singles don't take away from the anticipation of the collection of an album?
My God, I think a lot of it has to do with trying to understand what you want the album to be, what you want it to sound like, what the big idea of the album is, you know. And so by the time that I've chosen the singles I'm going to be releasing, I know that those singles I love, because I would never release something that is subpar. I refuse.
Yeah.
But they just don't fit in, right? Or at least there are songs that I was inspired to write outside of the album, because the albums that I'm working on right now, the songs have been written, they're finished in terms of writing. I just need to work and produce them in a way that feels like an album.
Mm-hmm. Okay, it makes sense to me. Now, talk to me about your directorial debut, because this is, you've done a short film before, but now you are directing. Is it Blind the Sacrifice?
Yes, called Blind the Sacrifice, and it premiered at Locarno Film Festival last year, and then it went to Stockholm International Film Festival, and then in January, end of January this year, Feb, it went to Sundance.
What's the film about?
The film was inspired by the story of Isaac and Abraham in the Bible. And it was a short story that I'd written, and because that story always bothered me. You know, it was always written from the hero's point of view, from the one who has faith, from the one that the myth, the religion has praised for thousands of years. And I always wondered, but what about Isaac's point of view? You know, well, like, how does he get up from that sacrifice and ever be okay with his father ever again? You know, and initially it was written in that space of the Bible, of that Semitic world, you know, the Mediterranean, whatever.
Yeah.
And then I took it out of that world and moved it to the Eastern Cape and made it about a family that has decided to listen to the father who says that he is God, and they've chosen to become nomads. But then the son now is like, does he hear God? And then it's dun dun dun.
As with all of our conversations with Unakane, they leave you wanting to go and explore and see the work for yourself. When are you returning home? You've got all the singles, which means that you're going to be on tour. So when are South Africans meant to be expecting you for a performance or two?
I really want to come back home this year, because I wasn't able to do it last year because I was busy working on music for a film, someone else's film.
Yeah.
But that's finished now. Come back to me in a few months and I'll give you a clearer answer on that one.
And you know I will.
Because it's very important for me to come back home.
Yes.
It feeds me, and I need it.
Absolutely, absolutely, and you always come home for every project. You always come home.
Always.
So we know that you will be here soon to give us all the singles live on stage. It's always a pleasure catching up with you. Always appreciate it.
Thank you too, Bridget.
That was Nakane, multimedia artist, joining us. That single is out, by the way. Wherever you get your good music, you can get it there. Killer 25, his reinterpretation of that Seal dance classic Killer. It was released on the 28th, 2 days ago, and the video is anticipated to also be out in just a matter of days. So you definitely want to feast yourself audio visually on that offering. It's a precursor to all the singles that are going to be coming out this year from Nakane. It's just gone 1:45 on the Full Circle with myself, Bridget Masinga. We're going to take a quick pause and then we come back while sticking on the artsy flavor. We're going to come back. Applications are open for Fête de la Musique, Joburg 2025.
Whether it is a CCMA referral, problems with a mechanic, or unfair blacklisting, Clientele legal plans are affordable, and you receive up to 670,000 rands worth of legal services per year. We cover civil, criminal, and labor-related matters. Our legal team will be your support 24 hours a day. SMS SAFM to 32195. That's SAFM to 32195. Clientele General is an authorized FSP and a licensed non-life insurer. T's and C's online. Standard rates apply.
Masandawana have a master plan to win in their own backyard to ease off the pressure before the trip to the north. But the Beast of Africa want to demonstrate why they are also called the Smiling One. This is the first leg quarterfinal battle of the Total Energies CAF Champions League. Do not miss out on the delight of African football. Mamelodi Sundowns versus Esperance de Tunis on Tuesday, 1 April at 2:30 p.m. Live on SABC Sport on DTT Channel 4, SABC 1 and SABC Plus. Also available on SABC radio stations at 3 p.m. Proudly brought to you by SABC Sport.
For the love of the game.
You're listening to Bridget Masinga on SAFM.
All right, as we continue with the life of stages, pages, screens, and more, looking at Fête de la Musique Joburg 2025, the applications are now open, and we are catching up to communications manager at the French Institute, Lali van Zadem. How are you doing this afternoon, Lali?
I'm great, Bridget. Thank you. How are you?
I'm awesome. Thank you so much. So talk to us. The applications are now open for the 14th edition of the Fête de la Musique Joburg.
Yes, so it is a super exciting time for us. We are inviting applications from up-and-coming musicians and poets who are keen to perform at the 14th edition of the Fête de la Musique, which will take place at Vic Yards in Lawrenceville on the 21st of June this year.
Wonderful. For folks who perhaps are not clued in, because this festival's been going for quite some time now, give some context and some background around Fête de la Musique. And it doesn't happen in isolation of just Johannesburg.
Yes, of course. So in 1982, actually, the Fête de la Musique was established in France by the Minister of Culture at the time. And the idea was to have a celebration of music in the streets, you know, on every street corner, in the train stations, just anywhere where people felt like they wanted to express themselves in a musical way. So we took that sort of concept of free music for everyone, and we adapted it to the South African situation. And we, every year, support young upcoming artists who are keen to sort of get a break in the industry to apply to perform at a free event. So it's open to anyone who wants to attend. And it's just kind of playing forward that, you know, that concept of music should be enjoyed by everyone, everywhere, no matter background, culture, or anything like that. It's music is for everyone, and it should be free to attend.
Absolutely. And this year's festival is also taking place on the backdrop of the 50th anniversary of UNESCO's International Music Day, as well as 30 years of the French Institute in South Africa.
Exactly, yeah. So we're really privileged to be able to celebrate our 30th anniversary this year. And what makes it so special is that it comes, you know, on the heels of 30 years of democracy in South Africa. So the French Institute has been around as long as the dawn of democracy in the country, and we've managed over the years to support several artists and creatives and people in different spheres of artistic expression to be able to do their craft and to do it in a way that is, you know, financially beneficial for them, to travel to France, to get support, you know, and to really be able to hone their craft and to live their art.
Speaking about, you know, that sort of support that you lend to musicians and poets, let's talk about the the importance, right, of being given a stage and a platform like this. We've just gotten off the phone with Nakane, who, in his history of rising to international presence, has taken to the stages of Fête de la Musique prior to that, but he's one of many.
Yes, of course. I mean, BCUC, which is a really well-known local band, have had incredible success internationally, with playing at the Fête de la Musique when it was still in Melbourne at the time. So there are big names who have performed there, who have gone on to get French exposure, to be seen by French agents, and to then tour Europe. So BCUC is often overseas. The entire band goes there. They have a huge following in France, and there's no reason that cannot be the case for future musicians and musicians this year coming in and pitching, their sound and their music, and then also making it big internationally.
Now, but by way of applications, Lali, how does that work? Like, people always want to know the mechanics of applying for a particular thing.
Yes, so it's very easy. You visit the French Institute website on the, so it's frenchinstitute.org. From there, you'll see a link. There's an online form that you need to fill in, and you send a demo of an example of your music to our email address, which is also listed there. And applications are open until the 16th of April, until we have received 300 applications. And then all the other T's and C's of when they need to be available and what is expected and what is offered is also available on our website.
Okay. And I note here that there's no physical audition that is going to be held.
Yes,
tell us how that works.
Yeah, so there's no audition. Obviously, we ask for an example of a song or a track or a poem or something like that they would like to perform. And then once that is sent to us, we filter through all of the applications, and we have an independent panel of judges who then decide on the final sort of lineup. We also, those selected a series of professional workshops in order to develop their skills. And then, of course, they get to perform on the 20th of June at Vic Yard.
And by way, I also see here, and maybe let's also expand and clarify on this. When we talk performance fees, what do those, what are those applicable for or to?
Yeah, so everyone who is selected will be paid a sort of a stipend or a gratitude, because we obviously know that people do not perform for free. So musicians and poets will receive payment, and then this is obviously for their journey, and because it's a free event, everything is funded by the French Institute. There are no ticket sales coming in or anything like that. All of the costs are taken on. It's just a way that we show our appreciation for these up-and-coming artists.
I get that. It makes so much sense. All right, so 21st of June is where the live performances are going to happen, because that's the day for Fête de la Musique. So it's taking place at Victoria Yards. And of course, if you do send through your submissions and you are selected and successful, I also assume you need to be able to present yourself in Johannesburg on the 21st of June so that you can actually make that live performance. Are there any other dates or information that is of importance that needs to be known prior?
Yes. So firstly, as I mentioned, the deadline for applications is the 16th of April, and then the professional workshops will take place just before the actual event on the 21st of June. So artists would need to be available to attend professional workshops in Johannesburg on the 19th and the 20th of June.
Okay. Lali, we appreciate the time with you today. That was Lali van Zaydem, who is the communications manager at the French Institute, just walking us through that application process, which is now open for Fête de la Musique Joburg 2025. And you can send through your applications. You heard applications are going to be open from where are we now? Okay, so they've been open from the 13th and they're going to close on the 16th of April. So 16th of April is when those applications forms close, or when they've reached their 300 application capacity. So whichever comes first, the date or the 300 capacity of applications. And you need to submit your audition online to them of your performance. There'll be no physical auditions for this, and they've put together a panel of industry professionals and experts to review the submissions and select artists based on your originality, your music quality, and stage presence. And this is for musicians as well as poets to, perhaps, who knows, give you the opportunity for you to perform live on that stage come the 21st of June, in joining the likes of Msaki, BCUC, Something Soweto, Nakane, and so the list goes on. It's approaching the top of the hour. Just by way of a reminder that on the other side of 2 o'clock, we're talking health and wellness matters today, because it's Tuesday and we're trying to unpack and understand Down syndrome. And I think it's one of those conditions that we don't, and pardon me if I err on the wrong side of the words that one uses, it's one of those conditions that we very much understand very little about, right? So we'll find out more. Down syndrome, I know that some folks will refer to it as trisomy 21, but I've also heard of trisomy 13. Not too sure if it's the same thing, and how many variations of Downs are there. And if you are a mom or a parent and you've been, pregnant at a particular age and stage, you probably likely have had your Downs test, just to ensure that everything is okay and you can proceed with your pregnancy. So there's many variables, and I think we'll learn quite a bit from this conversation that's coming up on the other side of 2 o'clock. And you can obviously send through your questions or your notes to us on voice note. 061-410-4107 is our WhatsApp line, and 086-000-2032 is the number that you can call us on. Let's get on ready for the top of the hour news.
The Market Update, Monday to Thursday, 6 to 7 p.m.
Want to stay ahead of the financial game? Join us tonight from 6 to 7 p.m. for an insightful journey through the day's market developments, financial updates, and investment news. Tune in for your daily dose of financial intelligence as we navigate the twists and turns of the financial landscape with expert insights. Only on the SAFM Market Update.
SAFM Market Update with Jimmy Muyaha.
Thank you, Bridget. Top stories at 2. Mbalula cautions GNU partners as budget negotiations continue, and Lesotho aims to make Gauteng the preferred destination of choice. For SAFM News, I am Ondalambana, and a very good day. ANC Secretary General Fikile Mbalula has warned political parties that negotiating the national budget on the basis of political scoring may result in the government of national unity being reconfigured. Mbalula was briefing the media today at Lutuli House in Johannesburg on the outcomes of the party's National Executive Committee that took place in Boksburg, Ekurhuleni, this past weekend. His comments come as one of the ANC's GNU partner, the DA, has stated that it will not vote to pass the budget tomorrow if some of its demands are not met. Mbalula says he is, however, confident that an agreement on the national budget will be reached.
It may lead to situations in which GNU itself, at the ultimate, given the outcome, have to be reconfigured. The ANC is committed to the GNU with all its partners. But the majority of partners is very important in relation to this GNU. The ANC is not wielding an axe that we want to cut people in the GNU. They will cut themselves out.
Gauteng Premier Panyaza Lesufi has emphasized the importance of repositioning the province as the preferred destination of choice. Lesufi delivered opening remarks at the inaugural Public Works Infrastructure Summit underway in Sandton in Johannesburg. It brings together 500 delegates from the public and private sector under the theme Turning South Africa into a Construction Site, Growing the Economy and Creating Jobs. Lesufi says while they work to foster strategic partnerships, they will also focus on getting the basics right to attract investment.
That are willing to invest in Gauteng and thus reposition the new Gauteng so that we can elevate it to the next level. But we can only do so when we deal with the basics. And the basics are simple, Minister. Fill the potholes, ensure traffic lights are working, clean our city, and ensure everyone is safe in our province. If we can't do this, no matter how hard we work to attract investment, we are not going to succeed.
Defense counsel for Stevino van Rijn, the second accused in the kidnapping and human trafficking trial of Jocelyn Smith, says police violated his rights at the time of an alleged confession he made. Advocate Nobahle Mkabayi was cross-examining the investigating officer in the case, Captain Wesley Lombard. Van Rijn, Jacqueline Polis and Kelly Smith, the girl's mother, are on trial in the High Court sitting in Saldanha Bay on the Cape West coast. Lombard explains.
After he indicated that he'd like to tell the truth, I was not aware or I did not know what the truth was that he wanted to tell. Die waarheid vir my en was dat hy heel moontlik inkriminerende feite gaan gee wat homself gaan incriminate and probably that the truth that he wanted to tell among self-incriminating information.
Different political parties, students, representatives and the Northwest University are leading a march calling for justice for a 7-year-old girl who was reportedly raped at Bergview College in the Eastern Cape. It is alleged that she was sexually assaulted on school premises last October while waiting for her transport. The marchers are expected to hand over a memorandum at the Northwest Education Department. Scientists in California say they've made major improvements to a brain implant that can translate thoughts about speech into spoken word in near real time. Researchers have been testing the experimental device on a who'd been unable to speak after a stroke of 20 years ago. The BBC's Olivia Noon has the details.
Researchers trained the AI-enhanced implant to decode sentences spoken by the woman inside her head. It then said them out loud, using a synthesized version of her voice, which it had developed using recordings from her wedding video. The difference between this device and previous versions is that it's able to produce results immediately and doesn't require the user to finish a complete sentence before it starts working. While the current system operates with a short delay compared to normal conversation, scientists say it could revolutionize the lives of those whose speech is affected by illness or injury.
Recapping the top story, ANC Secretary General Fikile Mbalula has warned political parties that negotiating the national budget on the basis of political scoring may result in the government of national unity being reconfigured. I am Mondela Mara for SAFM News Headlines at 2:30.
SAFM 104 to 107 nationwide. Switch to stream with SABC Plus. No subscription fees. Stream anywhere, anytime. Zero subscription fees. Download SABC Plus on Android or iOS and watch the Betway Premier Soccer League, the English Premier League, and the Bundesliga live. You can also catch up with Uzalo, Skim Sam, Generations on demand and listen to your favorite radio stations live. Ukhozi, Umhlobo Wenene, Radio 2000 and 5FM, all for free. Switch to stream with SABC Plus now. No subscription fees. Stream anywhere, anytime with SABC Plus. The Full Circle with Bridget Masinga. Monday to Friday, 1 to 3 p.m.
Mina now we used to flow like a river to the sea. We would agree in everything. Baby, nikwenze njani na wasushinja kangaka. Mina now where we used to flow like a river to the sea. We would agree in everything. Solo kuhamba nalabangani bakho. Mina nawe sisahloniphane. Mina nawe sisalalelane. Baby, nikwenze njani na solo kuhamba nalabangani bakho. Mina nawe sisahloniphane. Mina nawe sisalalelane. Baby, nikwenze njani na baby, nikwenze njani na oh yeah, wasushinja kangaka. Oh yeah, baby. Mina nawe we used to flow like a river to the sea. We would agree in everything. Baby, nikwenze njani na wasushinja kangaka. Mina nawe we used to flow like a river to the sea. We would agree in everything. Sama sama, ungalaleli labantu. Abasifiseli okuhle. Bathanda masikhala njalo. Sama sama, ungalaleli labantu. Abaxabanisi ondaba zabantu. Solo kuhamba nalabangani bakho. Mina nawe sisahloniphane. Mina nawe sisalalelane. Baby, nikwenze njani na solo kuhamba nalabangani bakho. Mina nawe sisahloniphane. Mina nawe sisalalelane. Baby, nikwenze njani na
Naima K and Robbie Malinga on this one, Sokwenze Njani. It's kind of also giving, I don't mean this in a disrespectful way, but it's also giving Kelly Kumalo on the vocals. Is it just me? Okay. Yeah, I thought it was Kelly Kumalo as well. So I was expecting to be like, oh, Naima K, Kelly Kumalo, and Robbie Malinga. It was giving me Kelly Kumalo vibes. Maybe it's just the way that Robbie Malinga produced this particular song. It's gone 10 past 2 o'clock. It is the Full Circle with myself, Bridget Masinga, on SAFM, leading the conversations that move the nation. And speaking of those conversations, we're going to have a health and wellness conversation now, understanding Down syndrome. And we're catching up with Dr. Rogers Mabatswa, who is a gynecologist and obstetrician OBGYN walking us through this very, very important conversation. Down syndrome, which is also known as trisomy 21. It's a genetic condition that's caused by an extra copy of chromosomes. But we'll find out more from the good doctor. Shall we take a quick pause and then we'll come back and we get straight into the conversation?
Bridget Masinga on SAFM.
Dr. Rogers joins me now on the line. How are you doing this afternoon?
I'm very well, and how are you?
I'm awesome. Thank you so much, Doc. Thank you. All right, let's get into this conversation. Perhaps let's start off by trying to explain to myself, as my listeners as well, when we talk Down syndrome, what is Down syndrome, and perhaps what causes Down syndrome?
All right. Thank you to you, and good afternoon to your listeners. Well, Down syndrome is a condition in which a person has an extra chromosome or an extra piece of chromosome, which actually affects how your body develops and also the brain develops. So basically what is happening is that you see when fertilization happens, normally a sperm and an egg that meet together to form the body. So what happens is that a paternal or the father contributes 23 chromosomes and the mother also contributes 23 chromosomes. So a normal person will have 46 chromosomes, or we can say a 23 pair of chromosomes. So a person who has got a Down syndrome has got an extra chromosome 21, whereby those people, they will then have 47 chromosomes. And that actually impacts how the body is going to develop, how the brain is going to develop. The person is going to be different from the normal person who has 46 chromosomes.
Gotcha.
So that's how Down syndrome is.
Dr. Rogers, tell me this, as a woman who's been on sort of a fertility journey, right? So I know that these conversations and being of a particular age and having had various sort of experiences in my quest to have a baby. Tell me this by way of Down syndrome, because I recently, and we're going to get into the NIPT test, for instance, but I recall my OBGYN saying on the back of us having this test that we're going to test for variable Downs, as in plural. So are they different types of Down syndrome? Like you say that it can be caused by a copy of trisomy 21, for instance, but I've also heard of trisomy 13. Is that also a Downs variable?
No. You see, with Down, the problem is chromosome 21. Because with 13 is another syndrome. I think it's Edward or Patel syndrome. But I just need to check that. But with Down, it's actually extra chromosome number 21, whereby there is a problem there. So yes, under Down syndrome, there are some types of Down syndrome, whereby it's just that it's a deep genetic a material thing, whereby there is a mosaicism, there is a translocation Down syndrome, and there is a non-disjunction Down syndrome. Because people with mosaicism, some of the cells have got extra 21 chromosomes, but other cells do not have extra 21 chromosomes. And with a translocation, you find that the person has got a Down syndrome gene, but they do not have the symptoms or signs of Down syndrome. And with the non-disjunction in the normal, the one that we know, where we see some physical appearance of Down syndrome, and those people will also be suffering from some intellectual disabilities, they've got some developmental delays, and even functionally, and the whole body image, it shows signs and symptoms of Down syndrome. So those are the different, the problem is with 21 chromosome, not 13. 13 is another one, 18 is also another type.
Okay, well understood. And then let's talk about how early one can detect Down syndrome, because they are tests that, very pricey tests, but there are tests that can be taken, right? Especially in pregnancy to detect whether or not there is a high risk factor for Downs or a low risk for Downs.
Yes. So yeah, that's where the obstetrician get more involved in this Down syndrome. So normally what happens is that almost all pregnant women, we should screen them for a Down syndrome when they are about 10 weeks pregnant. Between 10 weeks and 20 weeks, you can screen for that. So it's more of a screening, but when we do the screening, if you screen high risk or intermediate risk, we have to do more investigation to actually try to find if it's true you really have a Down syndrome or not. And so some other things that they use is the age, maternal age. A mother who's 35 years old and above, the risk of having a Down syndrome is high. So we also take blood from the mother, because the moms have got the DNA of the baby in their blood.
Yeah.
So there are some certain tests that are being conducted in there that it gets calculated. And if you find that when we combine those results, we call them the biochemistry results plus maternal age, you'll find that the risk of having Down syndrome is high. So it's just a screening test. It's not a diagnostic test. Then we might have to go further and do a diagnostic test where we do an amniocentesis. So with amniocentesis is when we take the fluid from the mother and we take the cells of the baby from that womb and we send them to the lab to check if there is normal chromosomes or there is an extra 21 chromosome. And then in that way, the diagnosis would have been confirmed that this mom is carrying a baby with a Down syndrome. Unfortunately, the tests are expensive, and most of our public hospitals, they cannot afford to do the test. But when you are in private, the test is done routinely, especially if you come in time. But if you come after 20 weeks, it's a little bit difficult to diagnose that, unless we send you for a fetal anomaly scan, whereby you're going to do a detailed ultrasound to check any features that are suggestive of a Down syndrome.
I want us to take a quick pause here, Dr. Rogers, and then we'll come back on the other side and continue our conversation.
Masandawana have a master plan to win in their own backyard, to ease off the pressure before the trip to the north. But the Beast of Africa want to demonstrate why they are also called the Smiling One. This is the first leg quarterfinal battle of the Total Energies CAF Champions League. Do not miss out on the delight of African football. Mamelodi Sundowns versus Esperance de Tunis on Tuesday, 1 April at 2:30 p.m. Live on SABC Sport on DTT Channel 4, SABC 1 and SABC Plus. Also available on SABC radio stations at 3 p.m. Proudly brought to you by SABC Sport.
For the love of the game.
Conversations that you connect with and react to. SAFM.
It is the Full Circle with myself, Bridget Masinga. We're in conversation with Dr. Rogers, who is an OBGYN and helping us understand Down syndrome. And Doc, you mentioned, by way of the screening, particularly screening of high risk moms, and you mentioned two screenings, right? So the blood test that is undertaken, and that I would presume is the NIPT test, and then subsequently, if that indicates that there is a high potential for Downs, then you have the amniotic test, is how I understood it. Am I correct? Just to reconfirm the findings of the NIPT.
So actually what is happening is that there is a screening test which is not expensive, the biochemistry that I was talking about.
Mm-hmm.
So, but in terms of that test.
Dr. Rogers? We've just lost Dr. Rogers for a moment. We're going to try and get him back on the line. But our WhatsApp lines are open as well on 086 000 2032 and 061 410 4107 is our WhatsApp line. Talking all things Down syndrome this Tuesday for health and wellness, trying to better understand this medical diagnosis, and also when perhaps mom and dad, expecting parents, should seek interventions, and in what cases should you go and investigate with a doctor, particularly if you are a high-risk parent. I know that with moms, OBGYNs will suggest once you've passed a particular age, as a parent, the risks become higher. If you've had multiple recurrent miscarriages, recurrent pregnancy loss, the risks become higher. If there's genetic predisposition in your family, the risks become higher. And so all these factors come into play. Yes, Doc, you were telling us about the affordability of one of the tests.
Yes, so after we have done that test, the biochemistry test, and when we combined with the age of the mother, if the risk is saying that it's an intermediate risk or even high risk, that's when we certainly, because the other tests are invasive, like amniotic test, it's an invasive test, and it comes with a risk of having a miscarriage.
Yeah.
So firstly, before we go for that, that's when we go for NIPT test, which is non-invasive prenatal test. So the NIPT, the good thing about it is it has got a very high sensitivity, and it's almost 99.9% in picking up the Down syndrome. So, and it's also a little bit expensive, and some of the medical aids don't even cover. Some patients have to pay cash for that. It's costing around 6.5 to around 8,000 to do the test.
Yeah.
And once the NIPT is ruling out your Down syndrome, then there is no further test because it's almost 100% sensitive. But if the NIPT can come back say that there is a high risk of Down syndrome, that's when you have to go for diagnostic tests like amniocentesis or chorionic villus sampling. Those are the ones that will tell us exactly whether it is there or not.
By way of, and I can testify to what the doctor said. NIPT test, not really invasive because it's a blood test, and it really does just set your mind at ease. By way of interventions, Doc, are they things that can sort of be considered or implemented that maybe have the potential of lowering your risk factors for Down syndrome? Because from how I understand it, really it's very much a genetic chromosomal predispositioned situation, or I'm completely off the mark.
No, you're very much right there. Well, it's something that is difficult to say that you can prevent it, because it's more of self-dividing, and there might be some errors while it is divided, while the cells are dividing and having some extra chromosome 21. So it's something that occurs by chance. You cannot really say that you have taken it from your grandfather or someone like that, and it's something that occurs by chance.
All right.
Yeah, nothing much to do and say that you must do this to avoid it. But the only advice is that women should try and have babies at least when they are below 25. We must know that when they are 35 years and above, the risk of having a child with Down syndrome is higher. But when they are less than that, at least the chances are lower of having a baby with Down syndrome.
And it's significantly higher, Doc, because when obstetricians and fertility specialists sort of start breaking down these risk factors in percentages, the rise of those percentage risk become increasingly higher the older one gets.
Yes, for example, for a woman who is 35 years, the chances of having a Down syndrome is 1 in 350 pairs. Okay? And when a woman is 40 years above, the chance of having a Down syndrome child is 1 in 100 pairs. And when you are 45, it's actually 1 in 30. So you can see the risk is significantly increasing as you grow older.
Absolutely.
So, yes, the only way of trying to prevent it is if you have kids or even complete family before the age of 35.
Zero, let's go to a WhatsApp, Doc, to see what our listeners have to say.
Dimela Bridget and our lovely doctor there. The question I would like to direct at our doctor is there a link between stammering, overeating, short-temperedness, and Down syndrome? Short-temperedness, overeating, oversleep, and what else? I've forgotten the fourth one. Okay, is there a link between such things and Down syndrome? Good afternoon, lovely people. Housen from Brown Fisher.
Good, Doc?
There is no association between those two. The organs that he mentioned, they do not have an impact on having a Down syndrome. Because it's more of genetic issue, whereby there is an error during the division of the cells. So overeating, not a risk factor, or short-tempered, not a risk factor.
Okay. I feel like, we could have gone on with this conversation just to understand the developmental challenges as well of Down syndrome. But unfortunately, we fast run out of time here today because I think it will help parents to make better decisions. I know that when patients are sitting with an obstetrician one-on-one getting ready for these tests, often the conversation is about, well, the choice is yours, but here are the realities of the challenges that you might face with your child's development, the constraints and the burden financially as a parent, and that becomes a whole nother conversation on its own. But for today, we have to leave it there, Dr. Rogers. We appreciate the time with you and for sharing your expertise with us. That was Dr. Rogers Mabatswa, who is a gynecologist and obstetrician. It's just gone 2:30. It's time for the headline news.
Thank you, Bridget. On the news headlines, motorists will be paying a little less at the pumps from Wednesday as fuel prices decreased substantially in April due to lower oil prices and a stronger rand. One person has died and at least 2 others have been injured during evictions at an informal settlement at Juju Valley Phase 2 along the Matlala Road outside Bulugwane. And there is a need for systemic child protection reform in South Africa, according to the Human Rights Commission, which was responding on the alleged sexual assault of a 7-year-old girl from the Eastern Cape. A full update follows at the top of the hour.
Bridget Masinga on SAFM.
This program is brought to you by SABC Education, enriching minds, enriching lives.
Hi everybody, my name is Kate and today I'm going to be talking about the school break that I am currently on. Even though I'm not really on vacation or going far to visit any loved ones, I'm not spending much time at home either. I visit my friends and I enjoy going out and just having fun during the holidays. I think the holidays are important, and I think you shouldn't be on social media for like the whole holidays, and you need to go out and do fun activities with your friends and with your family and just enjoy other people's company as well. My favorite thing during school holidays is definitely going out for lunch with my family and spending time with my family, because even though we still do that like on weekends, I feel like it's very like limited and we don't get to do it as often because of tests and exams that are coming up and just being very busy in general. So during the holidays, it gives us more time to spend time with each other and go out and have lunch and do all that kind of stuff. And I think being active is also very important during the holidays. And I stay active by going on walks, going on runs. Well, not runs because but I like going on jogs with my mom in the morning. And I also go to the gym like every day. So I think I'm pretty active. And it's good to be active during the holidays because it's a long period. It's really long. Thank you so much for listening. Have a good day.
Hello, my name is Ndamrena Namtangwe and I'm in grade 6. I am up to my phone, chatting with my friends and dancing. I am spending my time relaxing and watching TV. I am at home. My favorite thing to do during school holidays is watching TV and chatting with my friends. My perfect holiday is going to the beach. No, I don't go outside because it is cold sometimes.
Hi, my name is Mbalentle Mgomezulu. What I get up to during the holidays is mostly staying at home. I'm spending them by studying, staying at home by sleeping, and going out with my friends. I am currently at home. My favorite thing to do is chilling with my friends. It would look like me studying for about a week, and for the rest of the holiday going on vacation, depending on how long it is. I am preparing by already studying for upcoming exams. By playing netball, I keep myself active.
Hello, my name is Tumel Munareng. I'm on school break. On school break, I get up to fun with my friends, like going out to play soccer or just staying home to play video games with the others. Then I spend my school holidays by like going out almost every day, coming home at 5 o'clock, then having dinner at 7, you know the schedule. And right now I'm at home with my friends, but I might visit my other loved ones. And my favorite thing to do during school holidays is to sleep the whole day and have. If I could plan my perfect school holiday, it would look like me going to Brazil and meeting Neymar and going to other countries to see my favorite soccer players and basketball players. And I am keeping active by playing soccer almost every day. It really helps me keep fit, and to keep myself active, I just go outside, start playing soccer, or take a run or take a walk around the neighborhood.
I am mostly excited about sleeping late and not waking up early during the holidays. I can play video games with my brothers and watch movies with my family. It is always fun to make popcorn and sit together tucked away in a warm blanket and watching fun movies. I also want to try and practice hockey in in the holidays because I want to make it on the team next when the hockey season starts. Our coach showed us a few skills on Saturday before schools closed. I will also be helping my mom with cleaning our house.
Hello, friends.
friends, and happy Tuesday. School break is finally here. Whether you're already on holiday or counting down to the last few days, this is a great time to relax, recharge, and make special memories. So how are you spending your school holidays? Are you staying at home, visiting family, or maybe even traveling somewhere new? And what's your favorite thing to do during the school break? If you could plan your perfect school holidays, what would it look like? Would you spend more time outdoors, playing sports, visiting new places, or catching up on your favorite hobbies? And let's not forget staying active is super important too. Are you keeping busy by playing outside, helping at home, or learning something new? Exercise and fresh air helps keep your body and mind strong. So don't spend all of your time indoors. School breaks are not just for fun. They are also a great time to grow and learn in different ways. Maybe you can pick up a new skill, read an exciting book, practice something from last term, or even help out with small tasks at home. And for those who didn't do as well as they hoped in the first term, don't worry. Use this break to reflect, refresh, and come back stronger. Every term is a new opportunity to do your best. No matter how you choose to spend your school break, make sure to enjoy it, rest well, and stay active. That's all for today, friends. See you next time and continue having an amazing school holiday.
This program was brought to you by SABC Education. Enriching minds, enriching lives.
Masandawana have a master plan to win in their own backyard, to ease off the pressure before the trip to the north. But the Beast of Africa want to demonstrate why they are also called the Smiling One. This is the first leg quarterfinal battle of the Total Energies CAF Champions League. Do not miss out on the delight of African football. Mamelodi Sundowns versus Esperance de Tunis on Tuesday, 1 April at 2:30 p.m. live on SABC Sport on DTT Channel 4, SABC 1 and SABC Plus. Also available on SABC radio stations at 3 p.m. Proudly brought to you by SABC Sport.
For the love of the game. The Hammers want to ease off the pressure with collection of 3 points at the London Stadium to rise from the bottom half.
We picked out Socek, and there is the goal, and he's scored a few this season.
However, the Cherries believe a top half finish will be a good cherry on top.
Crosses towards the back post, looking for Tavernier, who side-foots it past Vicario, and that is brilliant from Bournemouth.
This is the Premier League. Be part of the thrilling contest between West Ham United FC and AFC Bournemouth on Saturday, 5 April at 3:30 p.m. live on S3. Also available at your fingertips on SABC Plus. Proudly brought to you by SABC Sport. For the love of the game.
You are listening to The Full Circle.
So our conversation around Down syndrome has sparked a conversation in studio where we are sharing intergenerational experiences with my camera operator and my technician in here. It's a recurring theme on the show, and because it's personal to me, issues around fertility and childbirth and just the struggles that South Africans have with fertility. So it's something that we touch on from time to time. And as this year unfolds as well, we're going to bring you as much information as we possibly can, because I also think it's necessary learning. We don't know a lot about a lot of things that come to fertility. And some things, the quicker we get the information and exchange the information, the quicker we can get to solutions for couples. And this was sparked by the conversation we just had around Down syndrome, of course, and Down syndrome testing, particularly in pregnancy. Joining us now, while still sticking on that medical tip, we're talking bipolar in the workplace. And we are catching up with Cassie Chambers, who's the operations manager for the South African Depression and Anxiety Group. And on Sunday, the 3rd of March, was World Bipolar Day, which is dedicated to raising awareness about bipolar disorder, reducing stigma, and supporting those that are living with the condition. How are you doing this afternoon, Casey? You good?
Good afternoon. I'm very well, thank you. Thanks so much for having us.
It's only a pleasure. Is it more Cassie or Casey?
It's Cassie, but it's really easy. So whatever you call me is fine.
Awesome. We appreciate the time with you. I mean, let's before we talk bipolar. So one of the things I really appreciate about doing this show is the exchange of knowledge and the consistent learning, right? Between myself, my guests, my listeners. And I came across the term, which is not the global term, neurodivergent.
Yes.
And I wondered, would bipolar be one of the sort of diagnosis that falls into a neurodivergent?
So a really, really good question. And I think in our world where language and words are so important on how we see something, how society reacts and perceives it, and how people are treated with it. And I think when we've seen, especially with regards to mental illness, how people use that word can be very negative. So saying that, oh, that person's crazy, there's a maniac, there's someone who's schizo. We've often seen some of these terms that we know are classified mental illnesses be used in a very negative way. And I think that's where the term, the neurodivergent spectrum, have come through. Where it refers to, instead of an illness or a disorder or something's wrong with someone, which is often what we see when there's a health issue that we can't necessarily see or touch. It's often invisible, which is what we see with mental illness. It's often used in a very negative way. So neurodivergence is mainly just the brain differences, not that something's wrong with you, but just the way that you think or feel or process the world is different. And some of those conditions include autism, ADHD, OCD, and things like that. I think this is where we're still on the spectrum, is that bipolar disorder is still seen as a mental illness rather than a neurodevelopmental difference. And I think because, again, we can see the changes on our brain, and I think this becomes a big topic of discussion and debate. But neurodivergent normally looks at terms such as ADHD or learning difficulties or autism, whereas bipolar disorder is still classified a mood disorder.
Okay. All right. And speaking of that classification, maybe a broad explanation then of bipolar disorder.
So I think the best way to describe it is bipolar disorder is these extreme changes in mood, from extreme highs where you're on top of the world, you feel invincible, you don't need to sleep for a number of days, and I'm talking 2, 3, 4, 5 days where you feel like racing thoughts, talking really fast, and then you have an extreme dip into a deep depression where you're feeling incredibly down, you're battling to get out of bed, and you're even thinking thoughts of suicide. Now, it's important to differentiate, or to kind of, the way we would describe it is that it's very normal for people to go up and down with their moods, to feel sad or happy if certain things are happening, but it's often seen that there could be something more severely wrong, or perhaps the bipolar episode, if those episodes are happening for a number of days and it starts to impact your daily functioning. So the easiest way to describe it is that bipolar disorder are these extreme shifts in mood from extreme highs to extreme lows.
Are they, folks, I mean, we've just had the conversation, obviously, about something completely different and not confusing the two. With the OBGYN, as we were talking, like Downs, for instance, and how does one detect it? Is one able to identify whether or not they are predisposed risk factors for a bipolar diagnosis, or there's no kind of marker, for instance? I know with autism, there's no genetic marker for autism.
That's a really good question, and I think with the science and technology and all the developments happening in genetic testing, I think that could change in the next 10 or 20 years. But what we do know is that, yes, bipolar disorder is genetic in the sense that it does run in the family. So if someone has an aunt or an uncle or a mom or a dad that has been diagnosed with bipolar disorder, it does mean that you have a higher risk or a higher chance of also being diagnosed with bipolar disorder. But it doesn't necessarily mean that if your mom or dad have bipolar disorder, that you will definitely have it. But we do see that it is genetic, it is passed down in family. And often when we're talking to callers and even when doctors are sitting with patients and you do a patient history, they can always kind of track back that there was someone in the family who that's how they behaved, especially 10, 20, 30 years ago. They could trace it down that granny so-and-so, had difficulties with this, and that was just, how she dealt with it. So, yes, it is genetic. The normal age for onset, though, is normally in your kind of late adolescence or early adulthood that the first episode might come forward. So it's very rare to see even teenagers or adolescents being diagnosed with bipolar disorder.
That's interesting. Does that tell us anything, Cassie, that late onset stage or age?
Yeah, I think that there's so much happening as adolescents, right? Our brains are growing so much. There's so many different factors. We often find that with early adulthood, all these additional stresses do come about. And we often see that the first episode is diagnosed at late adolescence, so like 18, 19, 20, or early adulthood. I think a lot of it has to also come to the point of how extensive diagnosis is, and that whole assessment process through doctors. I think they're very careful on how they get to that diagnosis, because we know that often a label can have a huge impact. So they're very careful in making sure that they've gone through various supports and systems. So even if there may be a teenager that has symptoms of bipolar disorder, I think that there's a lot of work that goes into assessing, supporting treatment of those symptoms before the actual diagnosis of bipolar comes on. But there's a lot of developmental processes that our brains take in early adolescence and young adulthood, and that's when we often see the first relapse. Also, it's the first time that a lot of young people are maybe experimenting with drugs or alcohol, and there's a lot of research around that often triggers the first episode. So I think that there's a number of different triggers and causes that may see the onset of the bipolar diagnosis.
I want also to touch a little bit, Cassie, on just if there are sort of micro signs that as a family or friends you could be alert to, things that one should be looking out for that might have you thinking that, okay, perhaps we need to investigate this a little bit more or a little bit deeper.
And I think it's also just, this is where it's so great to have conversations, especially around something like bipolar disorder, is that we may hear about it in movies, we might see other people talking about it, but to actually learn more about bipolar disorder, what it is and what it isn't, is a really good place to start. And I think it's about joining all the dots. We don't want to assume that because someone is not sleeping for 2 days, they've got bipolar disorder. Because someone might be talking really fast and have lots of creative ideas, you're thinking, that must be bipolar. I think it's to really look for some of these red flags, and again, it comes down to the impact on day-to-day functioning. If someone has been up and hasn't been able to sleep for a number of days, they're talking really fast, their thoughts are often very scattered, they feel, and when I say grandiose feelings, that they feel like they can walk, through traffic and not get hit by a car. They feel like they're invincible, that they can go out and party hard, and we often see some of the symptoms around spending lots of money, reckless behavior. When we see kind of joining all of those dots, impacting, they've missed work, they haven't been home, they haven't told anyone where they are, and then we see perhaps that shift into a very deep depression, where there might not necessarily be a direct cause for that depression, in the sense of a loss of a loved one or just gone through a very bad breakup. They just seem to slip into this deep depression where they withdraw, they isolate themselves from family and friends. They're even battling to get out of bed, even do like getting up and showering and brushing teeth. They've lost their appetite. And it's escalated into thoughts of, what is the point? I don't want to be here anymore, and thoughts of suicide. And I think it's when we look at all these different parts and say, actually, this is impacting relationships, it's impacting perhaps work or studies. Something more serious is at play here, and there isn't necessarily a direct cause or trigger. I think that's when, as a family, is to really reach out and say, hey, what's happening? Can we talk about it? It's building that support system for that person, because often they themselves don't always have the luxury of looking from the outside and saying, oh, these are the symptoms that are happening, right? Something's not right here, let's get help. So I think having a very supportive support network is very helpful.
But by way of treatments, because this is a manageable disorder, by way of treatments, what are the options that are there, and are there varying methods or combinations of treatments depending on the severity of your bipolar disorder?
Absolutely, and I think that there's also to understand that there are different types of bipolar disorder. Maybe in some cases where there's more manic episodes versus more of the depressed episodes. Some people would have rapid cycling, where the switch from the high to low is really fast and really rapid. So I think it's really working closely with a team of mental health professionals. And this is where at SADAG we always say that holistic approach to treatment, where you're working, as we know, bipolar disorder is a chronic illness. It often can be a lifelong illness, but it can be managed and treated. It's not like there's no hope or no support or no treatment. There are a lot of people who are living with bipolar disorder who are managed, who are living very fulfilled lives. So working with a psychiatrist who helps with the diagnosis and a treatment plan that includes medication, as well as with a psychologist, just to help with managing moods, relapses, triggers, and stresses is very useful. And sometimes even family therapy or couples therapy and working with a partner. And then also joining a support group. You know, often when dealing with any kind of chronic illness, it can feel very lonely and very isolating. And that's like being able to connect to a community where you feel understood, you can learn and share with each other, and you feel like you're part of a community. And I think learning as much as you can about the disorder, so learning about signs and symptoms, what the triggers are, learning about a mood diary. I mean, these are all really, really helpful tools that we can use to help us to manage our illness. And having that good support system. So that looks at the treatment of it. And just with anyone with any chronic illness, looking at making sure they're looking after themselves, sleep, eating, getting some kind of exercise is also really useful. And that just talks to anyone living with a chronic illness.
You know, the other thing that folks often speak about, and we've got contributors to the show actually who have been diagnosed with bipolar disorder, you know, been living with it the entire adult lives, and what they often speak of is the sort of the commitment to adhere to your medication and your prescription, not to default. And funny enough, I was just trying to remember with my team, when was World Adherence Day? It took place sometime now in late March. But that's at times the struggle with folks that have chronic disorders is the consistency of staying on treatment. Talk to us about why that becomes a sort of a slippery slope for someone with bipolar disorder.
Exactly, and I think so. Having to remember that a patient in that scenario to have to every day be reminded of their illness and these tablets that they have to take can be very hard. And we know that is a big contributing factor why it's so hard for patients to remember or to take their medication or to be compliant on medication and their treatment. We also know that setting up that routine is so important. Having it in an easy place that you can take every morning, it's having to do when you start the day. But our days are different. Some days we sleep in late, we have to rush. Some days we're sleeping in. Our day-to-day is so different. So it's having to incorporate that part of our adherence. I think the difference between remembering to take your vitamins versus remembering to taking your chronic medication is two very different beasts. In the same that if you don't take your medication regularly, it has an impact on your mood, and relatively quickly. in the sense that you're going to see signs of maybe your difficulty sleeping, and we know sleep has a huge impact on our overall mental health. But it also changes the composition of chemicals in your body, right? It's the same way that they tell you when you're taking antibiotics, finish the course, take it after every meal. But it's those kinds of things that really work in our system, and that if you're missing a day, it's not like you can double up and catch up. It affects the chemicals in your body, which are helping to regain that balance and those, stabilizing those moods. So it is something really hard. It does have a quick impact on our bodies when we're missing medication or we're forgetting a few days. And that's why we focus so much on how do you remember, having a support system, putting reminders. I mean, there's amazing apps that people can download as well to help them remember. And I think once we explain to patients and loved ones on the importance of sticking to treatment and medication, it can make a huge difference. But we know that it comes with the territory and it can be very difficult, but it's something that we're having to tackle head on.
Yeah. I just wanted to make one other quick sort of external observation, and please correct me if I'm wrong on this, right? So when we eavesdrop on a lot of societal conversation with folks that have mental disorder that have to be on chronic meds, the other sentiment that comes out is when they stop, this sense of wanting to feel normal, like a false sense of, normality in that day or two or whatever that time frame gap, when they stop taking the balancing meds before they have an episode. Folks always go, I just want to feel normal. And then you go, but that normalcy is very short window before things tip to the other side again.
Exactly, and I think this is where as well, especially for people living with bipolar disorder, we've often heard them when taking medication, people have said in the past that they might feel numb or they feel not as in tuned into their body. And I think that's a big red flag to bring up with their doctors. I think when we're reporting and filling in a mood diary, those are not necessarily symptoms that you should always be having. And it's important to share with your doctor as well. I think when we're talking about this feeling normal, and we always love to challenge that, because what does normal feel like? On our everyday today, we're feeling something different. Our bodies are reacting to how much work and stress that we're dealing with. But I think the understanding around the medication side is that they often feel like they can't tap into their creativity as much. Or having to rely on taking medication that might feel a certain way. But like you said, the opposite or the impact of that is then where it has the negative impact. And so many patients have gone through that kind of denial process, that trial balance where I'm just going to stop and I'll manage this myself. And any chronic illness, no one's able to do that with asthma or diabetes. And yet with mental illness, we think that we've just got this capacity to fix it, to change the way that we're feeling. And I think really understanding the role of that medication and treatment on top of the other support systems can make a huge impact. And I think hearing from other people what has worked for them, what has helped them to manage it, is really helpful.
Cassie, we appreciate the time with you this afternoon. That was Cassie Chambers, Operations Manager at the South African Depression and Anxiety Group. And that is where we leave it today. Ashraf is back from Eden, ready to bring you all the conversations that move the nation between 3 and 6. From myself and my team, inshallah, we get to do it again tomorrow.
Thank you, Bridget, and the team on the top stories. Fuel price to decrease, and Mbalula cautions GNU partners as budget negotiations continue. For SAFM News, I am Ondelambana, and a very good afternoon. Motorists will be paying substantially less at the pumps from Wednesday as fuel prices decrease in April due to lower oil prices and a stronger rand. The price drops take place at midnight tonight. The Department of Mineral and Petroleum Resources says 93 and 95 octane petrol will go down by 58 cents and 72 cents per litre respectively. Diesel will also see a decrease of 83 and 85 cents per litre, depending on the grade. Paraffin at retail level will decrease by R1.14 per litre. Robert Margay's fuel pricing manager at the Department of Mineral and Petroleum